folks that are confused.
Right.
A lot of folks are still confused about who they are. Because the first thing we are is children of the Most High, and we say Ashe. Because that's a fundamental basis for being African. That you know that you are in fact divine. Not trying to be divine, but that you in fact are divine.
Ashe.
And you just forgot.
That's right. Teach.
Yes.
You had the blinders on.
Thank you.
You had a fog over your eyes, like that fog that rolls into San Francisco, over there in Ocean Beach. But when that fog gets cleared away, fundamentally, you are divine. Fundamentally, you are in fact agents of the Most High. In everything you do, everywhere you go, you represent your boss.
All right now.
You represent the divine manager.
All right now. Teach good.
You represent the one who called you forth into being.
Ashe.
Yes.
Now, the question becomes, how well do you represent?
All right.
How well do you recognize?
Teach
How
good.
well do you remember, and how well do you resist the lies that are told about you? We give thanks to our ancestors.
Yes.
The ones who came before us, from Pap Singleton to Dr. King and Rosa
Yes.
Parks and Coretta King and all the countless Africans
Countless.
who struggled so that you could vote,
Yes.
sit where you want to sit on the bus. See, now you got the choice to sit on the back of the bus.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can sit on the back if you want to.
Okay.
Ashe? Give you a choice about being able to travel, move around. It's a blessing for me to be able to go and come back.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to go.
Right.
It ain't guaranteed you gonna come back.
That's right.
And I was a long way from here.
All right, you was.
There's a lot of hours on airplanes to get back. I started thinking about it. I said, man, what if this plane don't work? We over this water. And I can swim, but I don't know how far I can swim. But it's a blessing to see you again.
Ashe.
It's a blessing to come into the presence of our elders. And I have to go back just for a second. Today is my father's birthday.
Ashe.
David Hodge, my dad, was born today. Would have been 82. And, but my father still lives with me.
Ashe.
Because one thing that my children taught me when my father passed, in my grief, my children reminded me of something that I had tried to teach them through Ileoma Day, through Wose.
Right.
Because, we pour libation.
Right.
We call the names of the ancestors in spirit
Yes.
so that they will live in us,
Yes.
with us,
Yes.
doing the work with us every day.
Yes.
And I remember my children came to me and I was sad when my dad passed.
Of course.
And my children said, but Baba, he's just an ancestor, right?
Right.
See, sometimes your children will hold up a mirror to you,
Right.
reflect back what you thought you were teaching them. And they said, well, wait a minute, it's not that big of a deal, is it? He's just an ancestor.
Right.
He's still here.
Right.
The spirit is still rich and alive. So what's the thing?
Thank you.
And I had to flip that switch a little
All right
bit.
now.
We give thanks for our elders who continue to teach us. I interacted with some beautiful elders in Brazil. And it's interesting because some people are doing something right. Because we kept meeting people, heads of spiritual houses, heads of tejeros, heads of candomblés was 104 years old. 106 years old, 107 years old, and still in their right mind.
All right now.
Somebody doing something
All right
right.
now. Teach good.
So I bring you greetings from your family. I bring you greetings from your family.
Thank you.
See, at some point, we got to change our perception of who Africans are worldwide.
Thank you.
We think in North America, we the only one.
Right.
And then we travel, we get to go to West Africa, and we say, oh, there's a few other Africans from Africa. Or we go to the Caribbean and see some other Africans. And then we go to Brazil or Venezuela.
All right now. Teach
Peru, there's some Africans there too.
That's true.
Just like there's some Africans in Mississippi. There's some Africans in Stockton. Come on now. There's some Africans down there in Pasadena and Long Beach and Riverside. But we got to think, this is our family. And see, if you have family, how do you behave with family? You want to be with family.
Right.
You want to understand what family's going through. You want to understand how family can help you do something better. Maybe your family in Mississippi or in Salvador doing something better than you.
Right.
And if you're in communication, if you're talking, if you're learning together, maybe you can share something you're doing well. We had some folks that encountered us as family and started asking family questions.
All right.
Because family asks certain questions.
Yeah.
Some brothers from the Institute of Steve Biko. They got an institute called the Steve Biko Institute.
All right.
Why? They understand the Africans because they recognize, they remember, and they resist. Steve Biko and these brothers, once we got comfortable and past the pleasantries, they said, well, y'all up there in North America, you in the belly of the beast, and you got Wall Street, and you got Hollywood, and where y'all's banks? Where y'all's financial institutions? Because y'all could be helping us do some stuff down here. We could be borrowing money from you. They said, where's your real estate holdings? Wow, that's family, Family asks you hard questions.
Yes.
Family asks you, so what you really been doing? All that stuff you fronting with, what you really been doing? Are you sitting right there with all of that? And what's the religious thing y'all doing? Because y'all let these evangelical Christians come down here and they trying to get rid of Candomblé. That came from y'all stuff. What y'all doing in America? Family.
All right.
It said recognize, remember, and resist. Family started asking you hard questions, and we got to come back on some of that stuff.
Yes.
We got to come back.
Okay.
So when we went to visit Yemaya, and they said, well, what are y'all doing for your children? I said, Ile over there. And they said, well, our Ile, and this is interesting how, we have some parallels. Their Ile came out of something called Ile Ashe Jitango, I believe is the name. So it came out of a spiritual house. So Yemaya, which has a school, after-school programs, a beautiful cultural center in the heart of the Liberdade neighborhood, came out of a spiritual house.
All right.
And they said, well, what about Yemaya? I said, ha. What was that? A spiritual house. Right? They've been around for 40 years, and we've been around for 33. I said, okay, we got 7 years on us. We're catching up. But it was an interesting parallel, because when you talk to your family, you realize you're doing some things that, in common. And they're doing some things better than us. And we're doing some things better than them.
Okay.
But we can mix medicine.
Absolutely.
Because medicine is what's needed to cure the African soul.
Yes.
Medicine.
Yes.
All kind of medicine. Medicine for the body, medicine for the heart, medicine for the soul.
Yes.
Medicine.
Teach good.
Our people are healing each other wherever and however they can.
Yes.
Recognize, remember, and resist. Ayikwe Arma, who stands out as a great African thinker and intellectual. Some of us have forgot about 2000 Seasons, The Healers, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, Fragments, Remembering the Dismembered Continent, a series of essays that he wrote out of Remembering the Dismembered Continent. He reminds us, he said, accidents of history make us what we are today. But we can work to shape the course of our future. Because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in our future. I'm interested in our future. I'm interested in a future that does not allow Lead Weathersby III to be killed on the first day of the year in Oakland. Oh yeah, I was in Salvador, but I kept up with home. I kept up what was happening here. That's not normal. It's not normal to bury your children. You're going to keep me, you're going to get tired of me saying it.
Okay.
Wherever I go, I'm going to say that. Because our children are too important, our community is too valuable to normalize children who die. They got the same issue in Brazil. Different, plays out differently. We kill each other here at the rate of about 5,000 to 6,000 per year. The police, they did some of us. In Brazil, 36,000 people a year get killed by the cops. 36,000 people by the police, and 75% of them are black men. Same outcome. We burying our children. heard stories about people burying their children. They're tired of it too.
Yes.
They're trying to figure out, and the thing is, the police tactics that are getting used there come from here. Some of y'all might remember after 9/11, there was a deck of cards that the State Department and the U.S. military created for the so-called terrorists. They put Osama bin Laden and all these other so-called terrorists on playing cards. You may remember this. They had a picture on one side and a profile on the other side. The federal police, which is the police, in Brazil have a deck of cards that is the black people that they're looking for. Same idea. Idea that came out of here. Did we speak on it then?
No.
And we don't even know about it now. But when your family is hurting, it's your responsibility to ask questions. And it's your responsibility to help whoever it is that's hurting your family stop.
Yes.
And that's where the resistance part comes in. But Equid reminds us, he said that we are fragmented. We've allowed ourselves to be fragmented, European fragmentation of African space and time. The residual fragments are further divided into plantation-style colonies. They did it in Brazil, they did it in Barbados, they did it here in Mississippi and Alabama. And we still recognize those divisive definitions of who we are. We forgot who our family was. We think it's just us. We act like it's just us. But we got to recognize that people all over the world who are African descended, if we came together as one family, we could solve all our problems. Homicides are black on black here would be a thing in the past. We have enough international pressure to put on the Brazilian government. If you want to do business with the U.S., you got to do something about these cops killing all our kids. See, that's how our people, that's how family operates.
Right.
Now, you can operate in your own. You had a European model. My family is what happens in my house. But that's not African. You can call yourself something else. Afro-Saxon. You could be something else. But that's a European value. That your family is just your household. Some of black people operate like that. That's not in our culture. That's not in how we do.
That's right.
You better recognize.
Teach good.
You better remember.
Thank you.
And you better resist.
Yeah, true.
Arma tells us, he says that the actual behavior, you can proclaim Pan-African unity, and we love the Kawhi doctrine, and Nguzo Saba, and Ma'an, and Ifa, but if you're not acting as a family,
Right.
if you're not acting, if you're taking care of, like, understanding who you are and where you come from and your future, as a family, then you're not being African.
That's right.
He says we have to retrieve our suppressed ability to conceive of our wholeness. We still think we're bits and pieces over here, bits and pieces over there. But he says there's got to be a great awakening. And he sounds like Dr. King. See, a lot of our great thinkers and actors, when you really read them, there's a through line. There's a consistency across what they're saying. And Dr. King didn't proclaim himself as Pan-Africanist in the early part of his life, but when you read what he said from 1965 or so until the time of his death, he sounds more Pan-Africanist than Malcolm. He sounds more economic equality than what we're talking about right now.
Teach good.
And he said you have to remain awake. Dr. King said you have to remain awake during a great revolution.
Teach.
Arma says that for such an awakening to happen, we have to reevaluate and reimagine ourselves as fully human, as fully intelligent, as fully capable of facing and solving the challenges of our generation that are blocking a future for our children. And he says that cultural awakening is in line with our mission. It's in line with the mission of Yemaya. It's in line with the mission of the Candomblés that we visited. To that awakening, the prelude to a great social and political and economic improvement is imminent. When significant members of our population have enough real information of our history, philosophy, and culture to understand our potential. You got to understand your history, your philosophy, your culture to understand your potential.
That's right.
Not a little piece of it. That's what we focus so much on. You got to study Africa. Study the language. How you gonna be African and don't speak no African language? I know they're kind of quiet. I'm in the same boat. But how you going to be average? Because what's embedded in your text,
Yeah.
what's embedded in your oration, what's embedded in your way of talking and doing things is a whole nother worldview.
Yes, yes.
It's not a European worldview.
Teach good.
God bless them. That's your worldview. If you're European, great.
All right.
If you're Latino, great.
Wonderful
If you're Asian, wonderful.
thing. Do it.
But why you can't be you?
That's
Yeah,
Because being you makes you full human.
Yes,
Teach your children to be human by teaching them to be African.
Teach good.
That's how you came this time. Now next time you might come as Irish. You don't know what God's gonna do.
Yeah, this is true.
And that's cool. You gotta work out your destiny as an Irishman. Yeah, man. Or how many talk that right? Well, I mean,
That's good.
you gotta come, if how you come, that's how God sent you. But this life, you came culturally as an African.
True.
This time, you gotta remember, you gotta recognize, you gotta resist as you are. You gotta remain awake through this resurgence of racism in America.
Yes.
How these folks gonna get away acting the way they acting and we're not putting up a fight?
Right. Teach good.
You got people like Eugene Robinson talking about this for black Americans where we don't have no leaders and stuff. We always had disputes about who the leadership was. Come on now.
Right.
I don't know if some of y'all saw this piece, but he wrote a whole book about we 4 different black Americans now. Oh, that's helpful. We always, since when did Du Bois agree with Booker T, agree with Henry Harris, Highland? Since when did Malcolm agree with Martin? Since when did Harriet agree with Sojourner? But under that awesome generational proposition, we knew what the outcomes were. African people don't depend on one leader to be the leader. That's some American stuff.
Exactly.
Ashe?
Teach good.
That's some American stuff. We gotta remain awake through this evangelical attack on your folks' religion in Brazil, because they're coming for you next. They're coming for you next. When we did the video and you all indulged me with giving you a little report by Skype, when it cut off, and I said, where's the conspiracy here? It cut off. Right in the moment I wanted to talk about these evangelicals. They have come in places like Brazil, going to the ghetto in the favelas, and paying, check this, evangelical Christians paying drug lords to run out people who are doing traditional African religion in the Candomblé. Paying them to run folks out.
Wow.
They coming for you next. Come on now, family. Remain awake through this assault on ourselves. Remain awake in this shift of global economics. What's our place going to be? We got to recognize. I want to share a little bit because we're going to turn this into part of the African history class, a Brazilian component to this, an Africans in Brazil component. But the 3 of the big ideas I left with was, number 1, this idea of recognition. Ancestral daji is what they call it. Ancestrality. Not just occasionally pouring a libation for your ancestors, but if you could live your life on a regular basis thinking about who is the myriad of ancestors who have influenced you, who have left you a legacy of lessons in your philosophy, in your cultural behavior. Can you recognize them? Every year we celebrate Dr. King, but are we getting deeper in our understanding of King and who he was? Or are we just repeating every year I had a dream? Or are we just repeating every year the Montgomery Boys boycott? But he did other work. And he's a representative of his generation. Not just King, but all the people that marched, all the people that organized. Joanne Thompson, a name of a sister who was a key figure in the Montgomery Bus boycott, who was the person who generated 35,000 flyers when it was time to announce the boycott. Because she had a network of black women who were already operating. Ashe? See, the power of that story needs to be told. In Brazil, we saw a lot of energy from women in leadership. Women leading Candomblé, women leading Terreiro. Why? Because the legacy of the plantation system and the slave system in urban communities gave women more freedom of movement as market women. So they had a little bit more money, a little bit more freedom of conversation. The men were being surveilled. The men were being down-pressed even more directly than the women. So it gave women a financial base. And you see it playing out today in businesses, in spiritual houses that have leadership who are women. Thank you. And so the women in that community taught us a lot about what we need to pay attention to in terms of ancestors. I like the language people use there around. They say we need to valorize the lives of our ancestors. To give them valor. That's a great word. I like words. You know that. The valorization of your ancestors. And then it says, and then somebody said this, they said, if you recognize the ancestors, they will recognize you. It says calling them for assistance, learn what they did, learn it well. Figure out how you can do it better. And honor their memories regularly.
Thank you.
Number 2, remember, inside those Candomblés, these houses of the black ways.
Thank you.
Because that's how that term translates. Some of those houses are Yoruba influenced. Some of those houses are Congolese and Bantu influenced. But they're all African.
Got it.
They all understand how spirit operates.
Ashe.
From the very first event we went to where we saw the children of Yemaya, reminded me of the children of Yemaya, they come out and perform.
Ashe.
Until the very last thing I did on a Saturday night before I left, a 5-hour spiritual ritual, a ritual in a house dedicated to Sango and Yemaya.
Ashe.
And there was no preaching. There was no spoken anything other than singing, dancing,
Okay.
and movement and drumming.
Yes, beautiful.
For 6 hours.
Yeah.
And when nobody tired of me left.
No.
They didn't figure out how to serve the Orisha food, the meal, inside the ceremony while it was happening. So you ate while it was going on. That's a whole nother model.
Okay.
That's a whole nother model. And folks in trance.
Yes.
Folks in trance.
Ashe.
Seeing them being ridden by spirit. And you know, most of us who were there as observers, as participants, it was hard at first to kind of get into it, but then you had to settle your own energy into just be quiet. Just listen. Just be part of it. And toward the end of that ceremony, these sisters were moving around in this dance movement, in these costumes that were emblematic of the Orisha, which somebody said to us, don't get it twisted. The Orisha, the Nkisi, is just energy. That's what they said. They said, oh, it's all caught up in its deities. It's energy. And if you align your energy with their energy, then you're in God's energy.
Teach good.
That's a fundamental African idea.
Yes, thank you.
All the other trappings are just trappings. It's like clothes you take on and off. I'm still me if I put on a tuxedo.
Yep.
I'm still me if I put on a bow tie when I'll be a little choked up. I'm still me if I got on a Marcus Garvey t-shirt.
That's right.
If we got on a boob, it's still, we just us.
Thank you.
And we express it because we like beautiful things. We like our clothes. We like our hair. You know. But it's really about, are you divinely aligned? Can you be connected with spirit when it's hard and when it's easy?
Yes. Thank you.
Because we're good at being spiritual when it's easy.
Thank you.
But what do you do when it's hard? When things don't feel good?
Teach good.
Those sisters and brothers, when that sister came up to us and they were moving around and doing this dance, and at the end they offered themselves to just give you a hug. While in trance. I felt it. It wasn't something I had to think up on. I felt it. That's an indication that your spiritual house is in order when spirit is invited and spirit comes. And manifests itself in a way that you can perceive. I felt a wave of emotion come over me when that happened. There's some things and the sister told us one of the leaders, she said, some things you ain't got to explain, you just know. Some things you ain't got to explain, you just know.
That's right. Teach good.
Remember ancestors, recognize them. Remember the spiritual identity, the spiritual memory. Remember that the spiritual world and the material world are impregnating each other.
Yes.
We're not separate from the spiritual world. Spiritual world is not separate from the material. It's one thing.
That's right.
We got to remember. And our family all over the world can help us remember. Ashe. And then lastly, this big idea of quilombismo. Many of us saw the film Quilombo and got introduced to this idea of these maroon communities that were self-governed, that were out in the hills, remote from the cities. Well, the reality of that is that's one type of Quilombo, but there are hundreds, literally hundreds of spaces that are controlled by black folks all over Brazil. And interestingly, when they passed a new constitution in 1988, they said, well, we're going to make sure that the ownership of Quilombo stays with the people that they were originally set up by. Now, it's a complicated thing because many of these Quilombos were established in the name of Orisha. So it's like, Yemaya's Quilombo. Well, how you going to give Yemaya a deed? Right? So there's some legal stuff they're going through to figure this out.
Okay.
And the people who wrote the Constitution also underestimated the number of them.
Okay.
They thought it was just a few.
Oh, okay.
Turns out that there's hundreds, maybe thousands.
Okay.
And so now they're trying to say, oh wait, we didn't mean that.
Okay.
We didn't mean to give y'all all this land. Wait a minute now. They're trying to back up off of that. But see, that's where, again, family having conversation with family. Where's the international legal help to make sure that they fight those legal battles with that Constitution? I say. Because if you help your family, you know your family might break you off a little piece. I say. That's how my family operates. You know, I loan my cousin's son, you know, they bring it back, they just put a little something on it. You know, even if it's just a piece of cake. Like, I'm good with a piece of cake. You know, they always put a little something on it. But there's something about that idea of Quilombismo, and we heard of the new Quilombo. It's an idea. Any grouping, and see if this fits us, any grouping of African people who defend the values and manifest the philosophical processes of African traditions.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right. So we can connect with that. And they have whole language around, you know, if you're a part of the Quilombo and you're part of the Quilombo movement, Quilombismo, you become a Quilombola.
Okay.
So folks walk around with t-shirts talking like, I'm a Quilombola. Like, okay, all right. There you go.
Okay.
And one of the brothers who talked to us, his name was Lucido Neri. He's a retired professor. Because we met with professors and artists and spiritual leaders and ranger folks. And he said this. He said, even in Brazil, he said, we have to be the TV. Because he was talking about young people and these ideas. He said, we have to be the TV.
All right now.
That sounds familiar.
Bring it on.
We have to defend these principles. Quilombo is the vision and the mind of what preserves the tradition. And he said the role of educators first, free your mind.
All right. Teach.
That's what we've heard. He said educators first, free your mind. And we're all educators.
Right.
Everybody here is educating somebody about something all the time. He says free your mind. And then he said, advance the human being. He said, ethics are lived and not learned. Free yourself from the oppression of white capitalism and move forward. Move forward. Use that system however you need to use it to advance your people. He said, have a Pan-Africanist mindset. So when you looked at this, the role of the spiritual houses in advancing the culture, the role of all those candomblés and tejeros, the role of ancestrality or ancestral adaji, all of that means that it gives us an opportunity to recognize, remember, and resist in our own way. What's our challenge? How do we move forward? How do we take a bad situation and make it better? How do we get out of the situation we find ourselves in using our culture, using our history, using our spiritual practice first and foremost?
Yes.
There's people brilliant people out of Brazilian history, brothers and sisters that would remind us of people that we've seen. And one of the people I've been fascinated with is a man named Luiz Gama. Gama was born in the early 1800s, and he was born in Salvador to a mother who was a free African woman. She'd been born in West Africa, they think either in Dahomey or in Ghana, got pulled into the slave trade and then freed herself to become a great abolitionist. Even that language, we don't think about abolitionists other than in North America. But she became this great abolitionist, became part of the 1835 revolt called the Mali Revolt. Became part of something called the Sabanada. And Sabanada means, I don't know nothing. It's like a revolt that was based on, I don't know nothing. Like, you know, because a lot of the revolts, like Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, they all, like, fell apart because somebody told something. And in this one, they said, I'm like, I don't know anything, right? We're going to work this in a different way. But Luiz Gama, interesting, like I said, his mother was black, his father was Portuguese. White man, who was his father. And his mother was always on the road doing her work, never quite around, but he knew who she was. His father, low down, no good man, was a gambler. He come from a wealthy family, gambled away his whole family fortune, and then sells his son illegally. By this point, after 1822, it's illegal to sell an African. It was always immoral, always unethical, but it was illegal. But he sells his 8-year-old son into slavery. He puts him on a ship to Sao Paulo, and the little boy didn't even know what was going on until he's standing on the deck of the ship and yells over the bow, "Father, you sold me into slavery?" This is what happened to Luis Gama as an 8-year-old. So he gets sold to a plantation. He gets on that plantation. There's a student who comes to visit, and they tried to, quote, resell him. But anybody from Bahia, they had a reputation. If you're from Bahia, you're going to resist. If you're from Bahia, you're going to put up a fight. If you're from Bahia, it's like, I guess it's certain like places in Oakland. Certain people in Oakland be like, you go to the west, it's on, right? Like, you go to the east, it's on. There's certain energy about those places. Well, the Bahians, it was kind of on. So they couldn't, quote, get rid of him. So he's on this farm. A college student comes to visit the owner of this farm and teaches him how to read and write. As a teenager, how to read and write. And we take for granted education. Education is the key to your freedom. Often. So he read the papers that were associated with him being sold and realized it was illegal. And instead of confronting anybody, he said, "I'm out."
Okay.
He walked off the plantation. Because he got knowledge now. He got something to work with, Bobby John. He got something to work with. He's like, "What? Oh, I'm good. He goes on, he becomes a policeman, and then an officer in the police force disrespects him in some way, and he spent time in jail, and they gave him a dishonorable discharge. He was like, "Look, I'm still going to hold up for who I am."
Yeah.
But Luis Gama goes on to study with a lawyer and becomes a lawyer, an abolitionist lawyer. And in one case, Luis Gama stood up in court, made the argument, and freed 300 Africans.
Wow.
In one case. Goes on, thousands of people were freed, raised money to buy people's freedom. He was a journalist, he was a poet, and one of the key things he said, if a slave kills a master under any circumstance, it's self-defense. Now he said that in court. The white folks lost their mind. They had to sign for it. They had to say, it's like, you have a recess. They didn't say stuff like that, man. But Luis Gama lived that kind of a life out of that circumstance. He recognized, remembered, and resisted. So as I close, where do we go? How do we remember the dismembered continent and put it back together the way I said, put Asar back together? How do we remain awake at a time of great revolution, like Dr. King and his generation? How do we teach Africa the way Yemaya, every year they have a theme? And they pick one country out of the continent. They focus on Mozambique or they focus on Ghana every year. And they teach their children as much as they can learn about that one place. How do we resist when it's time for us to step up and fight against the oppressive forces in our lives and in our community? How do we resist? How do we recognize our ancestors? How do we make sure that our consciousness is raised? I brought you a little something and share this, and I showed it we just pass those around. Take one and pass it. On November 20th, every year in Brazil, they celebrate something called National Day of Black Consciousness. And it feels a little bit different to me than Black History Month, because history is one thing, but consciousness is something else. And every year, for the last several years, they celebrate this holiday, and they're working to teach their children. They have affirmative action laws which require the teaching of African history in the public schools. I asked them, I said, "How do y'all teach African American history?" And they said, "We don't. We don't really have information. Stuff we're getting off of TV," and they like 20 years behind on TV. They're looking at like Moesha now on TV.
Wow.
And Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, stuff like that. Old stuff, like, you know. But they every year, this was the poster that they had for this year. And you have to forgive my somewhat, probably it's a little bit off of that translation. But it says, "At least tell the story. Don't forget, my people, that Palmares, the place that Zumbi established and fought the Portuguese for almost 100 years, doesn't live anymore. But they say, we will make Palmares again. We will make Quilombo wherever we are. We will make ancestral Daji wherever we are. We will create houses of worship wherever we are, to advance, to promote, to preserve the divine African self." Ashe. I'd invite you to stand if you would as we close this out. If there's someone here who would like to join us in this community as a member who has not stepped up in that way, this is an opportunity. I'm going to ask if there are any, while some folks are thinking it over, if there are any quick announcements for the week. Any announcements, anything happening at Leoma Day we need to be aware of? Yes.
I don't want to make an announcement, but I want to thank this community for their support over the last couple of weeks. I have a 35-year-old ancestor now, one of my nephews, and it's, you know, it's a lot to absorb. But the sisters, the Wild Sisters, I thank you very much for all the support, and still keep my family in prayer.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. God bless.
Just a statement of thank you. Yesterday we had an investment workshop here, and it was a tremendous turnout. Thank you for all your support. And I will be having some others on economic development, because we need economic development bad in our community, and I'm going to work hard on that. And just come to you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I want to make an announcement about Sister Abiba, all of us sisters that shop a little. I don't know how much you shop, but Sister Abiba, she has got the store in San Leandro. She's been there 20 plus years. She's closing her store down. So go visit her and lift her up and see what you can do. Just go visit, go on. I have some of her cards here. She's a beautiful sister, made a big difference in that community, and it's in the Pelton Square, which is in itself, you know, a big thing. So let's go visit her. And I have some other cards here.
And just greetings from Brother Alaman that I spoke with, and he sends everybody his love.
If I can, Reverend Carlson, keep him in mind for economic development. And also, you mentioned serving food during the big ritual. And I'd just like to thank Mama Pam for having food at Kwanzaa. That was very nice. You served it as Kwanzaa was going out at the end. Thank you.
Any other announcements before we see?
Yeah, I have one announcement. I'm just so happy with that.
Oh,
And your travel was so productive. You were doing it. You were doing it.
And
Yeah.
if we can, I don't know, we have some first-time visitors. They wanted to, is that where we do that?
Well, we did earlier. They spoke earlier. Yeah. All right. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a roaring sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Now to the ones who are able to keep us from falling, the ones who have taught us for countless generations that we are one people, having one faith, one destiny, one love, one God. Let us call that name that our ancestors taught us for countless generations. Let us all say, Amen. You are the most beautiful people on the face of this earth. Any birthdays this week? Birthdays? Dr. King? Any other birthday? That's it.
Nope, I guess that's it.